In this video we're going to discuss solving quadratic equations by factoring, and we're going to deal with cases where we have to factor a binomial. So here's one situation where we might need to factor a binomial. We might have an equation like this. So this is a quadratic equation because we have an x squared term. And so as we discussed in the previous video, we want to make sure that the equation is equal to 0 first, because then we can use the zero product property after we've finished factoring. So in this case we want to subtract 5x from each side. And of course we can't combine those two terms on the left, so we'll just write it like this. And now, since we only have two terms, we can't use the box method or the grouping method like we did for trinomials. What we can do, though, is we can factor out any factors that they have in common. So here, the only factor that these two terms have in common is x. So we can write this as x times 3x minus 5. And now we have a product that equals 0. So we know that we can set each factor equal to 0 now and finish solving for x. So that's one strategy. If you only have two terms, is to just factor out whatever they have in common. Now we might also see some like this. So in this case, there aren't any common factors that we can factor out here, but this is what we call a difference of squares. So for a difference of squares, that means that we have two terms. They're being subtracted, which is why we're calling it a difference, and we can write both of them as some number or some variable squared. So to factor a difference of squares, factors as a plus b times a minus b. You can double check this by multiplying that out. Your first times your first would give you a times a, so a squared. Your last times your last would be b times negative b, so negative b squared. And then the outer and the inner would add to 0 because you have a minus ab and a plus ab. So for ours, we have x squared minus 7 squared. So that's going to factor as x plus 7 times x minus 7. And now we can use our zero product property, set each factor equal to 0. And so the solutions are positive 7 and negative 7. Alright, here's another difference of squares. So it's a difference of squares because it's subtraction. If it was a plus sign, we wouldn't be doing what we're doing here. And we can write each of these terms as the square of something. So the 16 is 4 squared. And that 9x squared term we want to think of as some term squared. Obviously, there's going to be an x in there because we end up with an x squared. But then for the number part, we need to think about what we would square to get 9. So that would be 3. So now in what I wrote on the previous page where I had a squared minus b squared, 3x is like your a here, and 4 is your b. So this factors as 3x plus 4 times 3x minus 4. And then we can use the zero product property, set each factor equal to 0. So the solutions are negative 4/3 and positive 4/3.